Hello and welcome to The Week, the show that takes a look back at the big talking points from across our region over the past 7 days with a helping hand from our studio guests. And coming up over the next hour, we'll be reviewing the headlines in the local papers and reflecting on the big stories brought to you by our Big Centre TV news team over the last 7 days. Remember, as we always say, this is your show, so if there's an issue you think we should be tackling or a point you want to make, just drop us a line through the Big Centre TV website, on Facebook, or by sending us an email to theweek@bigcentre.tv. Now, helping me to cast an eye over the headlines this week, I'm delighted to welcome the editor of the Black Country Bugle, John Butterworth, and perfectly timed for Export Week, Christine Hamilton, who's Acting Regional Director of UK Trade and Investment in the West Midlands. Thank you both for joining us. Christine, just starting with you, really, this is, I imagine, been quite a busy week.
It has been a busy week, yes. We had the launch at the start of the week of the government's new major campaign for Exporting is Great, trying to encourage more businesses to take up the export challenge.
And there's a whole programme of events in Wolverhampton, Birmingham, or right around the region, haven't you?
So we've today was our biggest event. It was Export, where we get 60 of our colleagues from overseas to talk to companies about the opportunities in their markets. And we had about 300 businesses there today, and then it continues tomorrow with an event in Staffordshire, and then next week we get the Exporting is Great Roadshow, so we have another series of events.
And you're reaching different businesses with each one of these events, then, are you?
We are, yes. We do a lot of, on a sector tomorrow it's a digital event, and then yesterday I did an event for women-led businesses to try and encourage more of those to take up the export challenge.
Excellent. We'll talk more about that a bit later on. But John, I'm delighted you're with us because last week on the show, the front page of the Black Country Bugle proved to be one of the big talking points that we had. You had that story of Coseley, the community of Coseley, getting its war memorial after years of campaigning. And we were just saying just how great it is that some local papers can actually still put good news on their front page.
Yes, we do try to. It is a good story. And the fact that Coseley's getting this war memorial after 100 years, an actual stone memorial, is great for the community, so we're delighted.
I know you've got some more remembrance-related stories in this week's issue, which we'll talk about in a minute. We've got a couple of packages to show for us, which tie in nicely with it, because communities across the West Midlands have been remembering our war heroes over the past week, and many towns, as you'd expect, held their official remembrance parades on Sunday, while others paused as well for a quiet reflection at 11 o'clock on Wednesday. Lois Swinnerton was at the commemoration in Walsall.
Can you talk me through the events today? How have Walsall remembered?
I think Walsall have remembered by ensuring that lots of our young people have been involved. We've had the Cubs, we've had the Brownies, we've had lots of the cadet services here. And we need those people to be the ones that keep remembering, don't we? It's all right us old dodgers doing it. We need the young ones doing it. We need them to be telling their friends. Had a wonderful time this morning. Went to the remembrance service and they can tell their friends what it's all about. And so I hope that because they will grow up remembering. And we don't need to lose that, do we? We need to keep ensuring that they do remember.
Yeah.
It's not easy.
Because you mentioned there remembering, all the veterans from World War I have now passed. There's not many left from World War II. How do we make sure the memory is kept alive and keep remembering as we go forward?
I really do think it is our young ones, very importantly. I know that I talked to my grandson, he's 14, and his attitude is, oh Nan, it's in the past, it's in the past. If it isn't remembered now, things happen again, don't they? And we will have more wars, more problems. And I think as long as within schools, we keep it alive in schools. We have the occasional programmes on television and whatever, but it's got to be of interest to the young people. It's many of them, of course, because they've lost parents over this past 20 years in different wars. They're the ones that will always remember. You hope that they talk to their friends and explain to their friends about it. Again, it's the young ones that are going to keep it alive. Otherwise, as I say, we're just old dodgers, just sort of doing a service and what's it really all about? And I think it's the young ones we've got to keep giving to.
And you led the parade today, how was that?
Oh, it was fantastic, it really was. so pleased that so many came, that we actually sort of not just cadets, we actually had the forces here as well, which was brilliant. It really was. First time we've had them for a long time. It went extremely well. A lot of people here. I was really quite surprised when we were actually at the cenotaph just how many people were there, and it was lovely walking back because they were applauding, which is one of the first times I've actually seen them do that. So I think that they appreciated it. It's pomp and circumstance, but we can't lose that. We need it, don't we? I think we do anyway. I think we should just ensure that people do see more of that. So.
And how did that feel when you were walking through and you saw just how many people were out on the street?
Oh, it was wonderful, it really was. There were beaming faces all over the place.
Today we have remembered. How important is it to just have that silence and remember?
I think it is very, very important. My own father was a prisoner of war in the last war. Many of us, I think, of my age have got parents who fought in the last war. But it really is important. You hope that it will never happen again. And I think the only way that we can try and ensure it doesn't happen again is to be aware of people that die and how many people died. I recently went to a thing at the Leather Museum, and one thing that struck me, that hadn't struck me, was in the First World War, how many horses died. Does that seem a silly thing to say? But literally 1 million horses died. Now I know that doesn't compare to human life, but when you suddenly think that 1 million horses died, suddenly things start to come home to you and you think, we can never, ever let this kind of thing happen again.
Well, to coin a phrase from the Mayor of Walsall, it's important, isn't it, that occasions like this are not just about the old dodderers, as she says. I mean, you could see from the crowds in Walsall that, you know, there are people of all ages there, and that's great to see, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Do you think that, you know, right across the region there seems to still be, from the newspaper's point of view, an interest, an awareness, a respect, I mean, about...
Definitely. When last year we appealed for families' memories of World War One, we're not sure how many stories that we'd get. We were inundated, and it just shows it was the grandchildren and the children of the veterans of the First World War wanting to tell the story, even though the veterans, many of them, have died.
It's important, isn't it? I don't know what you think, Christine, to make sure that these stories are being passed down the generations, because the people that can tell you firsthand are sadly dwindling in number now, aren't they?
Well, it is, yeah, and I do think that the lady was right, that I think the youngsters don't remember it quite so much, you know. It's not as immediate to them, although they do still learn it at school, don't they? It's still a popular thing, so.
Absolutely. Well, you'll probably be quite glad to see this next package, in fact, then, because, as we say, one of the most important aspects is to ensure that the next generation never forget the sacrifices made for their freedom. So I think it was great to see youngsters in Cradley talking so eloquently at the annual Thanksgiving event that was held earlier this week. Have a look at this.
Respect was the theme as children from Cradley C of E School played host to the Cradley British Legion for a remembrance service that began in the school and ended at the local war memorial. The children were joined by those from Colley Lane and Caslon schools and members of the local community.
This wooden oak cross was dedicated just after the First World War. The avenue of trees, which you can see in the background, is part of an avenue of 60 trees that were planted to commemorate those who gave their lives, who went to the church school.
At the war memorial, pupils laid poppies, each cross bearing the name of a former pupil of the school who served in World War One.
I've got 3 relatives. One managed to survive. 2 of them survived the war. One of them had 3 brothers that died. The other one managed to survive but died of a heart attack, and the third one got blown up on the beach, but he has no known grave.
So what do you think is important that we remember people today?
because they fought for our country. They may have not wanted to, but they fought for our country just to save us.
This is my great-great-uncle, David Southwick. He was located in the middle of France, but tragically he got run over by a German tank. We still remember him and have a grave by the big cross in St. Peter's Church.
Well, it means a lot to me because it means that we can come here every month and plant flowers or clean it, because he gave his life to protect our country.
I've come with my school to say thank you to all the soldiers that fought for us so that we could live in a safe world. Alfred James Butterworth is my great-great-uncle who fought in World War I, and he has no known grave. We also have Lawson Atwood, who's my great-great-great-uncle, and he also fought in World War I and has no known grave.
Now, this morning's service in the school, we've been doing it now for roughly 5 years, and being honest with you, it's always been good. But this morning it was extra special. You could have heard a pin drop at the appropriate times. The children were that well behaved, and it demonstrated the fact that they'd been made aware of what other people, men and women, have done on their behalf in the past. I can only trust that they keep this in their minds and remember what other people have done for them for the rest of their lives.
It's great there, isn't it, to see the youngsters making that very personal connection with their grandparents, great-grandparents, and that's what's got to happen, isn't it, for us to keep the legacy going. I mean, you were saying, John, about how you think, from the Bugle's point of view, you've got a responsibility, really, haven't you, in putting these things down as a matter of records.
Yes, we particularly want people's stories to be recorded, because if they're not recorded, the next generation, the generation after, are not going to know the stories of their grandparents and what they did. So it is important, and we've had a great response to their request for stories. They do want to tell everybody their stories. It's very moving.
Which is great. I mean, tell us about a couple of the stories along the same theme that you've got in this week's.
Yes, when I started at the Bugle 2.5 years ago, the first story I worked on was a vandalised war memorial. This time it was for the Boer War, not the Great War, and thieves had taken the bronze rifle. It was a dramatic war memorial. Anyway, 2.5 years later, it's been repaired and it was brought back for this year's Remembrance Day. So it was a happy ending to a story, but it took 2.5 years to get there.
At least it was an issue that was raised and somebody appreciated the importance and relevance of doing something about it. Because these days, local authorities and campaigners are looking for excuses not to spend money, aren't they, really, rather than...
That's right. But yes, Dudley did get it sorted out, which was excellent news.
And Christine, we were just talking, we mentioned John's story from last week about Coseley War Memorial. You've got a family connection to that area then?
Yeah, my father was born in Coseley and he was a prisoner of war in the Second World War, with a Japanese prisoner of war. So yeah, we've got family connections to that area.
And do you know all about the story and you're able to pass it down and pass it on?
I don't actually. When we were going back to the children, when I was young, my father used to talk about it all the time, because it's like, no one wanted to listen, but now he's not here, so I can't ask him. So I have been doing some family research. Isn't
it funny how, as well with programmes like Who Do You Think You Are, people start to realise just the possibilities of where researching your family tree can actually take you sometimes. So
and it also makes you think, I wish I'd asked my grandparents more when they were alive.
Yeah, definitely that, and thankfully it's easier now to get access to records. Yes. How far ahead do you plan the Bugle then, John, typically?
Yes, we're certainly working 1 or 2 weeks ahead. The beauty of it being a nostalgia paper, it's the only weekly paid for nostalgia paper in the country, so we've got the proud record. So it means that we can plan ahead quite well. We do a little bit of nostalgia news, but mainly the features we can plan. So we've only got 4 journalists on the team who write and design the pages, so they do a very good job.
I know, you know, speaking as a Black Country boy, it was always a staple newspaper in our household, and long may that continue. We'll talk more after the break. We've got plenty more coming up on this edition of The Week. We'll find out about youngsters who are going off to Abbey Road Studios, breaking records, and also looking at who is caring for our carers. All that to come and lots more after the break. Welcome back to The Week with me, Carl Jones. I'm joined in the studio this week by John Butterworth, editor of the Black Country Bugle, and Christine Hamilton from UK Trade and Investment in the West Midlands. Now, here's an issue which I'm sure is a talking point right across our region. Who cares for our carers? With the population living longer and health services stretched to their limits, there are tens of thousands of unpaid carers across the West Midlands who aren't looking after their loved ones around the clock. As Roshni Patel discovered, some help is at hand from this respite centre in Solihull.
Well, it's very important that we sort of publicise what facilities there are available, particularly for carers. I mean, this is a vital service because giving short breaks enables carers to carry on caring, gives them some free time to perhaps, recover from the exertions of day-to-day life of looking after people. And if there were not services like this, then some of those carers would find they couldn't carry on caring and might actually need care themselves.
What does a centre like this mean to Solihull?
It certainly means a lot for people in Solihull. We have an ageing population here, so we do have more people perhaps with early dementia or even advanced. They do have quite intense needs for caring in many instances.
I mean, there are lots of council cuts going on around the region. Are there fears that, perhaps centres like this could be affected?
Well, money is always tight, but this sort of facility has got to remain a priority because in a way it saves money in the long term. As I said earlier, if the carers break down because they the strain of caring, then that increases the costs. So no, it's a vital service we want to maintain.
So Ken, do you think councils should concentrate on funding more centres like this and perhaps opening more, as opposed to on some of the projects that that they're on at the moment?
Like, you have to strike a balance. I mean, they are expensive facilities, so we want to make the best use of them, but we are looking at all sorts of ways in which we can support people who have disabilities or particular needs. We've just opened a centre in another part of the borough where people can go and look at aids that help them to remain independent in their own homes. So we're trying to encourage independence as much as we can, but there are people who have particular needs that centres like this can really cater for.
There's a lot of pressure, isn't there, at the moment on authorities and organisations to do what they can to help people to stay in their homes for longer, and most of the time it's what people want anyway, isn't it? But obviously the NHS is, as we hear, almost on a daily basis struggling to keep pace with demand. So facilities like this and support for carers who are almost the unpaid arm of the NHS now has got to be a good thing in the region, hasn't it? Do you think?
Definitely. My mum had dementia for the last 6-9 months of her life, and I've got great admiration for the carers who came around to the house. We did manage to keep her at home until the last few months, but they did an excellent job and I'm really impressed. So more support the better for me. Yes. What
the care industry in as a sector is massively growing anyway, isn't it? I mean, is it an industry that you come into much contact with?
Yes, actually, yeah, and we do actually help some care homes to export. Some of them want to export their expertise, so they're working with care homes overseas. I had somebody the other week who was looking to do a partnership with somebody in India, actually, to sell the expertise we got there, because they want to set up a similar facility out there.
Because we are at the cutting edge, aren't we, in the UK, in terms of, the training that we provide.
Yeah.
We hear plenty about maybe that the salaries don't keep pace with perhaps what the industry thinks it should, but that's another issue.
Yeah, but we
isn't
do
it,
have
really?
lots of expertise, and I don't think we always shout about that in any industry.
Do you, divulging a little bit, diverging a bit, do you find that's maybe an issue in the West Midlands as a wider point, that maybe we don't shout enough about the good things?
I think it's an issue for most regions, actually, that, you know, saying today, you know, a British flag does still carry weight, and I think we're the only ones sometimes think that, you know, a British good doesn't carry a weight, but it does. People want to buy British in all sorts of the world, parts of the world.
Do you find any much of that sort of patriotism coming through with maybe your readers' letters at the Bugle? I mean, readers' letters at the Bugle are prolific, aren't they? You get 4 or 5 pages a week.
Absolutely, and I could do many more, probably 8 pages of letters a week, it really is. Yes, there's what comes over is a pride in the past, a pride in the black country, and a pride in the whole country. And people look back on their lives with great nostalgia, but also with great gratitude and great pride of what's been achieved.
Are there stories that you put in the paper one week and you think to yourselves in the newsroom, this will provoke a lot of letters, or we're getting a lot of letters about this? Are there typical types of stories that you think?
I never cease to be amazed. Some little story, a few paragraphs near the back of the paper precipitates a lot of letters, and a big story on the front, you think, oh, that will get lots of people reacting. It doesn't work like that, and I wish I knew the answer, but we always get plenty of letters, but it's amazing what topics people want to talk about.
That's what makes it so great. You know, no newspaper is right or wrong, aren't they? They're all just different. So now here's a story which is in the Bugle this week, in fact. It's proudly stood in the centre of Dudley for around 150 years, but the town's historic fountain has been dry for almost as many years as most people can remember. Well, not any longer. Monica Plaha was there when the taps were switched back on.
I don't think anybody can remember the last time the water was coming out of this fountain. So it's revamping of the fountain, bringing back to life as part of the big revamp of a marketplace in the town centre. So we're really proud to have this fountain working again.
And briefly, what's the history of the fountain?
The history is 150 years old. It was first established, it's donated by the Earl of Dudley in 1867. It was designed by James Forsyth, and it has been a focal and a glory of the marketplace. It's situated on a place where there was a town hall here at one time, and it's on that site, and absolutely since then a glory and pride for Dudley, and I'm glad that it's back working again, the water in the fountain where it should be after a long time.
What's the response been like?
Response absolutely fantastic. We've had people from all over the place coming here. We've got the old original one of the keepers who came and gave talks about the importance of this particular fountain, and they're here today together with the poets. You probably see around the fountain we've got a poem that's written about the fountain. It's a beautiful word, and really positively it's been taken by the public, and I'm hope that a lot of tourists will come and you know, have a look at our fountain in Dudley.
You were just saying then, Christine, you can't actually remember having ever seen water in...
No, but I must have done. I used to go to Dudley as a child because my nan was based in Tipton, so must have been, but I don't remember it, and it is such a lovely memorial.
I think John can probably shed a bit of light on it for you and tell you probably had never seen water in it before.
Many decades, so it's good to see it back. I was thinking Dudley really suffered for many years with Maryhill coming in, but it does now seem to be reinventing itself, and it does seem to do a lot of good work restoring, like the old fountain from 1867, but putting the history back, and I think they deserve to be applauded for the work they're doing on this.
It's, I mean, £6 or £7 million, I think, isn't it? It's part of a big scheme. We spoke on this programme 2 or 3 weeks ago about a new public bench which had provoked a big positive talking point, promoting a long forgotten or little known local poet. And these are all, I mean, they're bits of your local history that give your town a personality, don't they? They give you a unique selling point. And
it's the character of the town, I agree. And it brings people into the town and makes them feel proud of their town.
And don't we, I mean, from a business point of view, you know, we hear all the time that town centres are dying, out-of-town centres are setting up. How can we get people back into towns? It's by offering people something they can't get anywhere else, isn't it, really?
And it helps to bring the investment in, to just give a positive image of the region. I overheard somebody when I was at London Youth the other day saying to somebody, oh, did you see any green fields when you came out of Birmingham? I think, you know, that's the sort of image we've got to get over, isn't it? You know, and we all know, you we're talking about the redevelopment in Birmingham and other areas, that's what we need to promote.
Absolutely. One now just that leads us on quite nicely to one of the stories that was in the Birmingham Mail this week. Towns trying to get people in for various reasons. This is not quite such a positive story. Headline says health and safety fears stop Christmas lights switch on. And the story is that Solihull won't be having an official Christmas light switch on this year because of, the paper says, health and safety fears. Organisers say huge crowds expected in the town would make it difficult to stage a traditional countdown and switch on ceremony. Now this is a classic festive occasion that's been going on in our towns for generations, isn't it? I mean, you'll know from your pages, won't you?
That's right.
What's gone wrong, John?
It's sad. It's this balance between putting on these events and the health and safety fears. We live in a world where any problems and immediately the solicitors are brought in, and it's difficult. I understand Solihull's point of view, but it is a shame that events like this may be lost.
Do you pick up a constant health and safety sort of alarm light on companies' radars these days?
No, I mean, it's obviously something every company has to look into, but there's got to be a sensible way forward on lots of things, hasn't it? Perhaps I'll take more advice on these things. So.
I mean, I think a lot that we've had stories on Big Centre about some of the towns being presented with huge bills just to upgrade their Christmas lights to meet electrical safety. So you've got to look at the flip side as well, haven't you, and say, look, some of these communities could have been living a bit dangerously over the past year. So you welcome some kind of control and regulation, don't you? But as John says, it's a case of getting the balance right, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Do you find that companies in the region are concerned about red tape in general? Is that a big issue all the time?
Yeah, it normally is, and I know it's something that our ministers are concerned about, and always welcome to hear from businesses on if there are issues with red tape, to try and see if there can be something that can be done about it.
How do you go about campaigning? Is it easy, to get people to listen to you?
Oh yeah, I mean, obviously, they can put it up through us or direct to business innovation skills, or quite often it's through chambers of commerce or other industry bodies where it then goes up to the government to consider.
Because having a collective voice from a region where you're all saying the same thing at the same time is one of the most important, isn't it, these days? And so, and the West Midlands, because of the nature of the industry here, it's got a powerful voice, and
it has.
The government does listen, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, things get changed. In fact, I was at dinner with one of our ministers, and that's the first thing he asked companies. Is there any regulation that we can consider and get rid of? So.
Good to know. Well, we'll take a break now, when we'll also take in the latest headlines from the Big Centre newsroom, and we'll be back for part 3. Don't go away. Welcome back to part 3 of the week. Now, being a newspaper editor, John Butterworth, editor of the Black Country Bugles, had to dash off to meet his deadline, but I'm still joined here by Christine from UK Trade and Investment in the West Midlands, so we've still got plenty to talk about here, haven't we? Yep. Let's start with the issue of floods, because it's estimated that more than 30,000 properties across Birmingham and the Black Country are at risk of flooding. Now, this week we've heard concerns from climate experts saying that rising temperatures will increase the risk, so what better time for a flood risk management roadshow to take to the streets in Birmingham?
I mean, today is the first event of its kind, which brings together all the stakeholders that have an interest in flood risk management. And I think it's great to see not only the Environment Agency, Severn Trent Water, voluntary groups and even community groups come together here in Birmingham for an event which is first of its kind.
So how serious is the risk of flooding in Birmingham, and how many people are potentially affected?
In terms of how serious it is, I mean, you will have noticed that there hasn't been any major flooding incident in the recent past in Birmingham, whilst other areas were at the forefront of news. However, that does not mean that we do not have flood risk issues. There's about 30,000 properties that are affected, and it's how we manage the flood risk to them properties, make sure that any flood that could potentially happen is mitigated.
So what guidance and support can they receive in order to tackle this problem of flooding?
Well, this is where 3 documents play a very important part. The first one is about the flood risk management, the second one is about surface water, and the third one is about sustainable drainage. All these three documents, alongside with stakeholders and partners, address the issues about flood risk prevention.
How would the council go about tackling the issue of flooding in Birmingham?
It's about understanding the risk and prioritising the risk where there is a higher priority. But it's also about giving advice out to those residents or businesses that could be affected. It's about working with the partners to make sure that we mitigate any flood risk that potentially could happen within the city of Birmingham.
And you've launched the flood risk management. So just talk us through briefly what this is all about, what it aims to do.
The flood risk management document is one that we'll be launching later today. The consultation will run for 12 weeks. It seeks to look at how the council will respond and investigate flooding incidents. It's about priority areas for the flood defence, and it's about how we make sure that the design of new buildings and sites include flood management. So any new buildings that do get areas that do get developed are not prone to flooding.
Really interesting map that was just shown as part of that package there. You don't think of Birmingham and the West Midlands as being a hugely water table heavy place, do you?
Not with rivers, but I think there probably are more than we think, you know, as the map shows.
And more houses being built, more pressure on drainage, sewage systems. We're told that global warming is going to increase the potential torrential downpours coming to the region, and yet I don't know whether you find this, people just still think, oh, well, it won't happen to me.
Well, I'm sure they do, but I mean, it's good to see events like that, isn't it, that sort of point out that what is being done to mitigate those risks. And I know we do have a lot of expertise in the region, sort of in flood barriers, because again, that's areas of business that we help to export, such as industrial penstocks, based in the Black Country, who won a Queen's Award a few years ago for their exports of those type of barriers.
What sort of countries are we exporting our flood expertise to?
All sorts of places, Southeast Asia, and I know people have done work obviously in the United States as well when they had Hurricane Katrina and those sort of disasters, so people have gone out and sort of helped on the back of those to sort of say, you know, we've got these products that could help in the future.
The flood barriers along the rivers in the region, the River Severn and the like, I mean, they have made, some people were sceptical about just how effective they would be, but you know, to communities like the Bewdleys and the Shrewsburys of this world, they've made a big difference, haven't they?
They have, yes. But I mean, there are still more areas, and was it part of Worcester, I think, the other day that was looking to have barriers where they hadn't yet been put in, but...
Have you ever been flooded?
No.
It's one of those things I still I'd wake up in the early morning just having nightmares about. You know,
yes.
2 inches of water in the house, and if I get a little drip through the window, I'm out with my sealant straight away. I can just, it has to be one of the lack of control that you have. You just sat there as a householder and it just happens to you so quickly, and there's nothing you can do about it.
And nothing you don't get over it quickly, do you? So yes, I always feel sorry for people that get flooded.
Yeah, completely. Now, talking about overseas trade, we've had obviously the Prime Minister of India in Britain this week. The Chinese were in town a couple of weeks ago. What's your general perception on the work that's being done to place Britain in front of the right tables for, you know, to maximise?
There's an awful lot of work being done, and I think sometimes, you know, India and China are important markets for the right companies with the right product. But you know, last year we did lots of exports to the USA, and it's still is an important market. It was a 12% growth for this region with exports to the USA. So it's not just India and China. There's all of the world to go out and for the right product.
Do you find, I mean, without getting party political one way or the other, do you sense a general feeling from exporters in the region one way or the other on the in or out of Europe debate?
I think it depends on the company you talk to. I was at a debate the other week where that issue was raised, and actually nobody put their hands up to say they wanted to go out of Europe, but when the conversation started going, someone did say they just wasn't in favour of it, but we didn't get much into the argument about it.
I think the thing is, there's so many different issues. No one is going to agree wholeheartedly or disagree wholeheartedly with all of them, are they? And so it's important that people go into this referendum informed, isn't it? I mean,
it is, but I mean, we do think people forget how much we do export to Europe and rely on it, and you know, the free trade that we have there already, I'm sure, has helped this region.
And what about exports from the West Midlands in general? On the up across the board? Is manufacturing or service? Is there peaks and troughs?
It's generally on the up. Certainly for the export of goods, it rose 3% last year. So we're now the third highest exporting region for the export of goods, and we expect that to continue when we get the next set of trade statistics.
Excellent. And you were saying that you were in that room, that
I
the
was.
flood management
Yes,
scheme
indeed.
was. What were you doing there?
I was doing an event with women-led businesses. We had speakers on the different areas that they might see as barriers to exporting, such as getting paid, getting their goods to market, having the right website, and language and culture issues.
And ever thus then, really, they've been the big issues for quite some time.
They have, yes,
And
along with IP protection, which also came up yesterday as well.
yeah, I've had a busy couple of weeks.
Yeah. So it's all things we can help with, and I think that's it. People don't realise what help is out there.
Do you think people know where to go? You know, are there people that have recognised they need help, but actually don't know what to do next?
Yeah, I think there are. I think that's taking that next big step in a business is, you know, they've got their business going and then they think, oh yeah, I'm getting inquiries from overseas, but I don't quite know what to do, and some people just stop at that point. But we hope at some point they will see one of our adverts on the TV, or they'll come in via their local Chamber of Commerce or even their bank or one of our other partners, and they're pointed in our direction so we can help them sort of strategically move forward.
Excellent. Let's take a change of tack now, away from export, onto music, because a group of primary school students from Walsall Wood will be following in the footsteps of the Beatles, no less, on a trip to the famous Abbey Road studios soon. And this is after singing themselves into the record books on a 24-hour marathon. Day tripper Roshni Patel, see what I did there, went along to find out more.
24 hours of complete harmony. With hymns, carols and melodies at the ready, St John's Primary School came together to achieve what can only be described as an incredibly rare challenge.
It's fantastic. It's absolutely fantastic. We're excited, but more so for the children. They're unique.
When you're doing something that certainly we've never done before, and we don't know if anybody else has done before, we try not to let things like that stop us. So yeah, to be doing something different just adds that extra edge to it, I think. I think there was a huge sense of achievement, but also a huge sense of togetherness. And
absolutely.
That's what it's about.
And now, having won the gruelling battle against tiredness, sore throat and croakiness, there's just no stopping these powerhouse voices.
We've been talking about doing some sort of recording for a while, and Christmas songs are an ideal choice. But as I said, we don't want to do things normally. We don't want to do things the simple way. We want to add that extra bit of spice to it.
Step out the box.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the suggestions that we came up with was to go to a really famous studio like Abbey Road. And we said, well, if we're talking about one like Abbey Road, why don't we try and get to Abbey Road itself? So that's what's happening, and and hopefully produce a really fantastic CD.
With the sound of music still bouncing off the school walls, I wanted to know if Steve and Sarah could see a future for music in education.
We like to think that we give the children the whole the best of an education, and that's the whole package, not just tests and core subjects, English, maths test. It's not about that for us. It's about creating a curriculum that covers everything we can possibly throw at them. Everything. It's not about the data and statistics for St John's. It's about giving the children experiences, lifelong experiences.
After speaking to some of the children, it's becoming clear that this 24-hour sing-along and the build-up to their Abbey Road adventure is teaching them more than just rhythm and beat.
But never give up.
Yeah, you can do anything if you try.
I'm lost for words, I don't know, because it's amazing that all these famous people are singing there and now we're actually going there. So yeah, it's just amazing.
With these children singing in perfect pitch, there's no doubt that they'll end their year on a high note. This is Roshni Patel for The Midland in Walsall Wood.
What a great story that is. I think if they're looking to film the next edition of the next episode of Nativity the movie, I think that's the place to go, isn't it? There,
it is.
It's great. I never remember being when I was at school, being given the chance to go to a place like Abbey Road Studios.
No, but it's good, isn't it, to widen their horizons and think about other things, like you said, either the normal curriculum, to sort of broaden their education, if you like.
Switching on students to the sort of business opportunities at the earliest possible age is quite an important thing, isn't it? You were in an event on Wednesday this week doing that, weren't you?
Yeah, we had some of my advisors were at a local university yesterday, sort of working with their students to get them to think about international exports from a very early age, sort of think, you know, about that international challenge, how people can help them, and sort of when they set up their own business to think about selling overseas from the start.
And you find people are quite young business people, pointed in the right direction. They're full of ideas, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. And so with in the digital age, with e-exporting, you know, lots of people are selling online, and it's just an expansion of that, really.
Absolutely. We should say, on a music theme, it's not too late if you want to give yourself an opportunity to hit the highlights, because it tells us in the Birmingham Mail this week the Britain's Got Talent team are still looking for Brummies to take part in the next series. Researchers from the production team are visiting the city on December the 5th and the 6th, ready to travel wherever the talent is, it says. So I'm sure you'll be able to find the Britain's Got Talent details if you think that it's an opportunity that's too good to miss. Now then, did you let off fireworks in your back garden on bonfire night this year, or did you go to an organised display instead? A lot of people have still got bonfire displays coming this weekend, but we sent Tom Russon to spend the evening with local fire crews to find out what it's like being on call at one of the busiest times of the year.
Remember the 5th of November. Gunpowder, treason and plot. Famous words that everyone will be familiar with, especially at this time of the year. 5th of November is for many an evening on which to break the cycle of dark nights huddled indoors and head out into fields to be gently cooked by bonfires, wave sparklers and watch firework displays. But for the emergency services, bonfire night can be a busy time. So I came to Walsall Community Fire Station to speak to those on duty and learn a little of how they handle Guy Fawkes Night.
This is Walsall. My home station is Bloxwich, but with our dynamic staffing, I've come over this evening to keep one of the machines on the run this evening. It's my 25th year, so I've probably worked, I would have thought, a good 20 of the 25 years I've been on duty for Bonfire Night, and traditionally it's one of our busiest nights of the year.
So a lot of memories?
Yes, good and bad, yeah. Some of the Bonfire Nights are extremely busy, and others not so. Bit of a luck of the draw, but obviously the weather conditions make a big difference. And again, with the pre-planned bonfires now, it's actually not as bad as it used to be. Years gone by, before they had organised events, which are obviously a lot safer. We had a lot of fires, secondary fires as we call them, spread into fences, to sheds and to houses. But the last few years has been a little bit quieter than traditionally what we've been used to.
As if on cue, after less than 20 minutes at the station, we received our first call, a secondary fire in Great Bar. Echo 1-2 was dispatched immediately, and I followed with Station Commander Russell Gordon. Russ, we received a call about 3 or 4 minutes ago. Could you tell us what's going on?
Yeah, well, we received a call at fire out in the open that the crews are responding to. Obviously, as an FDS officer, we come on a little bit later. We're a little bit slower in the response because of we're responding in vehicles. So obviously the crews will be there within the 5-minute response time. So obviously when they get there, the incident commander will assess his situation and go from there.
Unfortunately, traffic is more forgiving to enormous red fire engines, and by the time Russell and I arrived at the scene, there was nothing to see. So, back to the station, where I met one of the newest firefighters at Walsall, Stuart Wise.
I understand that this is your first bonfire night.
It is, yes. I've just been part of the fire service just over a year now. I'm looking forward to getting my first bonfire under my belt.
What would your advice be to people looking to enjoy their bonfire night?
Stay safe. If you can, go to an organised event. If you would like to have your own fireworks, research the firework code. Make sure you stay a safe distance away when lighting the fireworks. And any children, make sure you use gloves with your sparklers. Any parents that are lighting fireworks, if they don't go off, don't return to them, as there is always a possibility they will explode at any point.
I also managed to get a quick word with Russell Gordon, with more words to the wise.
My recommendations is, that don't have these bonfires at home anymore, just because they do get out of control. Fireworks as well can be a problem for the fire service, but cause horrific injuries. So I recommend that you go to proper organised events.
Between the hours of 8 and 9 p.m, West Midlands Fire Service received more than 200 calls. So, I left the boys hard to it, hard at work keeping up to date with the latest training, fuelled of course by a few gallons of tea. This is Tom Russon for The Midland.
I don't think I'm entirely surprised that it was a quieter night, because I remember when I was this high, you used to get your box of standard fireworks in the garden and everybody would be doing it up and down the street. Not that way anymore, is it?
No, it does seem quite, but as we were saying, it's probably spread over a longer time, isn't it? People have, and there's different festivals that people celebrate, so I think that's probably why, but it probably is safer, and I'm sure the fire service is very grateful for that.
Although retailers seem to sell their fair share of imported fireworks, not exported, these, aren't they?
Yes, we were saying there's only one manufacturer, it seems, in the country of fireworks now, but yeah, it still seems to be a good market for them. So
absolutely. Well, that's all we've got time for this week. Thanks very much to Christine and to John Butterworth as well for joining us. We'll leave you with an optimistic story, because the magic of the FA Cup is still alive and well in Stourbridge. They've made it through to round 2 after another giant killing episode, and they're now just one more match away from a potential tie with a Manchester United, a Chelsea or even an Arsenal. Excited? Of course they are. Have a look at this and we'll see you next week.
Stourbridge are through to the next round of the FA Cup after securing a 2-1 win against Dover. Now they must do the same against Eastleigh if they are to make it into the third round. What does manager Gary Hackett think of the team's recent success?
It was a great occasion for us. It wasn't the kindest draw we could have faced. It was a long journey down to Dover. They were the form team, but on the day the lads were fantastic, and we thoroughly deserved to come away with a 2-1 victory. We've got a nice blend of youth and experience. We've got experienced guys who've been there, seen it, done it, got the story, and we've got young lads who've never been in this situation before, and the excitement was absolutely fantastic, and to get the obviously into the second round now of the FA Cup, it's a great achievement, but hopefully it doesn't end there. We're looking to see if we can finally make that third round where you're then looking at utopia with perhaps some of the real the biggest names in football.
How do you feel about the match against Eastleigh?
We're at home. It's great for our supporters. There'll be a full house there. Eastleigh are in the conference and riding high. I think both teams will view it as a positive for getting in the next round. We know we've got to provide another giant killing, but you don't get to the third round of the FA Cup without doing that. I just hope I'm talking to you again after December the 5th, talking about the third round, because that will be then that we've done something incredibly special. We'll keep our feet on the floor. We know it's going to be a tough game, but we're in there and shouting, and as I said, we're looking forward to it.
But what do the fans think?
Brilliant, yeah, absolutely brilliant. I never thought they'd beat Dover.
I think it's great news for the football club, great news for the town. I know they had a good cup run a couple of years back, which brought a lot of attention and publicity to the club, so I think it's great news for everyone.
I think they've done absolutely brilliant. Come on, Stourbridge, and beat Eastleigh in the next round. Let's get some red and white down at Wembley.
Stourbridge face Eastleigh at the beginning of December. Lindsay Smith for The Midland in Stourbridge.